A very good morning. Yes, the first edition of Morning Attentive is big story for the year 2017, and what else could we be talking about but the president's end of year message, end year 2016 and beginning of the year 2017. And now, before I introduce my guest, the president did say the following words as he concluded his speech. He said, and I quote, "If we love one another, celebrate our diversity, resist division, and stay united, we will achieve greatness. Let us join hands and declare the new year to be our year of prosperity." That's quite heartwarming coming in from President Museveni. I repeat, if we love one another, celebrate our diversity, resist division, and stay united, we'll achieve greatness. That's quite heartwarming. I must repeat and reiterate. But he said quite more than that. He gave, a hint of where the country is, and of course gave us a clear direction on where the country ought to be. Middle income status by 2020, and that leaves us with only 3 years. Shall we be there? That's the question that's lingering on everyone's mind, especially when you look around you and realize that, well, the infrastructure is not up to the speed that is required. Social services, education, and health are not to the mark to which a middle income status or middle income country should be, and everything in between. You also look at yourself as an individual. Do you look at yourself as a citizen in a middle income status country, or do you think in the next 3 years you'll be up there? And what could be done? Does the president's end of year message, beginning of year message answer that question to you? Does it give you a clear direction on who you should be by 2020? That and more is our discussion this morning on The Big Story. A very good morning. I'm happy to have Mr. Don Wanyama, Senior Presidential Press Secretary. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Simon. Thanks for having me here, and Happy New Year to everyone watching the show and all Ugandans. Of course, also from the president.
Yeah. Incredible. Now, New Year message 2017 by President Museveni. He does highlight a number of, aspects. Amongst them, obviously, is what will power this country. And I'm sorry I'm starting with that because that's closest to my heart, the matter of electricity.
Exactly.
He gives, he illuminates and creates a very huge ray of hope. But you see, he makes this speech a day after newspaper reports indicated a hike in electricity tariffs, perhaps on the same day where many were unable to watch this message because they didn't have electricity at their homes. There was an outage, or so to speak, and yet, indeed, for sure, even for what it is now, they're still paying heavily for electricity. Doesn't this really beat the whole spirit in which he says we are committed as a government to offer even manufacturers electricity at 5 US cents a unit?
Well, of course, we must acknowledge that where we are in terms of, first of all, the president's message largely, like you say, the quote you put at the end is really to push the country to prosperity. And so the theme largely is how do you push the country into this? And I think there are like 3-4 key areas. The question of industrialization, the question of investments, the question of agriculture, and then the services sector. And I think that's what the president was talking about. Well, about energy, you know that we've obviously made some strides on that front. I know some people don't want to hear this, but about 30 years ago, this country was just generating about 60 megawatts of power. The dams were basically dead.
The dam, it was
exactly, yeah. You know this history very well. Currently, of course, we know that we have a bit of surplus power, especially during the off-peak hours.
Even at peak hours?
Even at peak hours, yes, it is not being consumed fully. The question of tariffs, tariffs are revised nearly every quarter, and there are certain factors that determine this, including how the Ghana shilling is performing, the price of oil globally, and others, and that could have affected it. But the president's vision is that when we have these 2 dams that Simon, you partly supervise now, fully supervise, the idea is that at that point, we should be able to have Ugandans paying much less for electricity. But the bigger incentive is actually meant for the industrialists, the manufacturers, because as you know, these are people who use power to generate jobs and create products and all this kind of things. But even ultimately, the domestic users will also have a bit of relief in terms of that front.
Sorry to cut you short, but we know that in 2016 we had a general election in which
Yes.
President Museveni did win clearly, and that was in February.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, he issued 23 directives, and he talks about them in his end-of-year message.
Yes.
It's 23 directives that are supposed to guide his government under the ambit of Chisanja Hakuna Mchezo. And some of these, of course, are in the realm of establishing a few things, including the national carrier Uganda
Yes.
Airlines, QU. And we're told that this is, according to the words of the president, will reduce on the financial hemorrhage to other airlines by Ugandans and those traveling to Uganda. How far are we with regard to this? He didn't give much detail in his speech.
Yes, I didn't give much detail, but the plans, the Minister for Transport a few weeks ago actually, I think, detailed this to some of the media. The plans are underway to ensure that we have Uganda Airlines in the skies this particular year. I think the discussions with providers of the Airbuses are already underway. I do not want to delve into that detail, the nature of the discussion, but I know that these will be leased, not really bought, because I think international practice now is that many airlines don't buy planes. I know that the focus is going to be...
I'm so sure those in Rwanda this morning are listening to you keenly and saying, what is he talking about?
I know that the focus for the start is going to be on the regional routes, and then gradually it will move to the international routes. So yes, we're going to have a national carrier in the skies this year.
Well, he also talked about fast-tracking of the standard gauge railway to reduce the cost tremendously of transporting a metric ton of goods from Mombasa to the hinterland, which is in Uganda, by, well, half the price. Also,
exactly,
that
about
also
$1,650
from the 3,500.
yeah, about half, yeah.
Exactly, and he also talks about the fact that this takes a day as opposed to 21 days of the current train.
Yeah.
He's also talking about the improvement on our road infrastructure, because trucks with axle load.
Exactly, they're tearing down the roads. Yes.
But then what we have seen, Don, is that people read about the standard gauge railway largely in speeches like those, media places like this one. They don't see much on the ground. Is there confidence on what's going on at the moment that the standard gauge railway will perhaps also will see a rail put on the ground this year?
There's no doubt that we're going to have rails laid this particular year, the standard gauge railway.
Maybe what worries us is that in neighboring Kenya, we are seeing the wagons being,
but you see, exactly, that's the point, is that this rail runs across the region, and it had to move in that kind, because it starts from the coast. So the Kenyans obviously had to lay the rails first, and then move to us, and then the others. What's happening currently is that there's been compensation. They're creating the route for where the rail is going to pass. You've probably heard about the discussions that the president mentioned about this, clearing Bukasa area, which is supposed to be Namamve, yeah, exactly, the inland port, but also where the rail is going to pass. I know that people, for example, in Tororo have already been compensated, has been cleared, they've moved up to Busoga. So there's actual activity going on. The discussions are about to be wound up on financing, and I'm very sure that we shall be having the rail construction.
Sure or optimistic?
Optimistic that the rail construction will actually take root.
Importantly, the president does capitulate and agree that the adversities of climate change are here with us. Yes. We're looking at drier, longer spells, less production from our sometimes very arable land. And he's now talking about irrigation. He's talking about bringing water to the farms as opposed to waiting on to Mother Nature to rain upon us. He's talking about solar-powered pumps, and he's telling we who can afford to buy them now at our own cost, but also tell the Uganda Development Bank to hedge that on that kind of thing. We are in this situation because the country has little regulation on how we are depleting our forests, how we are burning the little cover that we have for charcoal and all these things. So while you're promoting solar-powered pumps on one hand, he doesn't seem to talk about how we can safeguard the available forest cover to provide for at least some rain.
No, Simon, that's not true. The president actually, and he's launched a campaign. The other day you saw him in eastern Uganda doing on-spot checks on the wetlands. Yeah, exactly. The president is very passionate on the question of environment. I think we've taken a beating from tampering with nature and the environment. It is crazy. I was up country, Simon, and in the eastern part of the country, and people haven't seen a drop of rain in the last 8 or so months. It is really crazy, and obviously, and government is planning for this, because I think there's going to be a very big shortage of food in these coming months. We're hoping that the seasons are able to resume because that's what the experts have been telling us, that this year we should have the rains coming back around March and probably the seasons get back to stability. But this has been an eye-opener, and the president has, like you've seen, has made it a very serious point for him. In that he just doesn't talk about irrigation. He actually says the reason we're finding ourselves in this is that because we've tampered, especially with the wetlands and then the water bodies. And yes, there's direct, very strict instructions to the regulators to ensure that these natural resources are protected.
The president also decries the balance of the imbalance in trade, really, that for much of what we do, we are just a net importer and less of an exporter. And he is giving all sorts of statistics, how much we give so many countries and all
China,
that.
India, and others.
That is what we know. He doesn't really give us so much of a solution to change that imbalance of trade.
Actually, you see, for you to be able to change that imbalance of trade, there must be something for you to sell, because really it is the fact that you're buying stuff and you're not selling enough, you're not exporting enough. And to be able to create what to sell, it means you must be able to have these industries in place, you must have the factories in place. But also there must be a mindset change. And the president has spent a lot of time, he's been meeting traders, Kasita and others, explaining to them why they must do less of these imports and try to support. In the president's message, you know, he mentioned the fact that the Bagaga of Uganda,
the rich men,
yeah, they're the ones who own arcades, but arcades are really import stations, really.
They are bazaars for imported stuff.
It's not the people who have set up factories who are producing cement who are doing this kind of thing, and that's part of the mindset change that he's trying to push. That he's trying to show people, you know, you can be Mugaga without just running an arcade, but being able to do this kind of production.
You build a hospital.
Yeah, and because of that. Obviously, there are going to be policies on limiting certain, you know, imports and stuff like that. And he's been meeting the traders. He actually sent a group of traders from Kampala to Ethiopia, because Ethiopia has done fairly well on the front of, you know, local production and exports in the textile, in the leather industries, in the coffee industry. And this group of traders came back and met the president, and they were, you know, they were basically conversed, because they're saying, you know, this is actually where the country needs to be going.
As opposed to
trips
just to Guangzau to
but 2 days ago I saw a tweet from Ambassador Christian Schmidt, your former boss.
Of the European Union delegation.
And congratulating the president, because for the first time since I think 2005, in 11 years, Uganda's exports to the EU have actually surpassed the imports. So there's a bit of a fair balance of trade. And these are positive indicators that if we just insist on the message and push it, obviously there's going to be very positive change.
Well, of course, the president's speech cannot be complete without him talking about his pet subject of oil. He's gloating with the fact that 8 production licenses have been granted, and this was done in August this year. But Ugandans are ever anxious to see the first drop of oil out of the ground and possibly into their cars. Yeah, we're all anxious.
Yeah, the president did mention that when he issued the strategic guidelines around June, July to cabinet, one of the issues that he tasked cabinet was to ensure that the production licenses are issued. And 6 months down the road, 8 of them have been issued. Everything is being done. All stops are being pulled to ensure that we see the first drop of oil in 2020. And I think that's going to happen.
Well, the president also talks so much about agriculture, never mind the fact that we decry the absence of our usual seasons as we know them, but he does make mention of the fact that Operation Wealth Creation has given quite a boost to the agriculture sector in the last 1 year. What are the positive indicators of this? For the most part, people think Operation Wealth Creation is one of those reward medals for supporters of the NRM, and doesn't really go so much about, you know, to the citizens, as it were.
That's not exactly, that's not true, Simon. I
really?
think, yeah, the inputs have been, you see what happens when the president did direct this time round, that there should be specific inputs. And there was a mapping of the country to know which crops do well in which part of the country, and that's what has been happening. Of course, part of the problem has been the weather, like we pointed out. People did get inputs in several places. The crops didn't grow, didn't mature because of the weather, and that is why now there's a lot of emphasis on irrigation. we are hoping that if this new season stabilizes, and also with government intervention in irrigation and building the water schemes, over 100 of them across the country, we should be able to have our food situation return to normal. But importantly, for Operation Wealth Creation is that the idea is to try and push about 68% of people who are still in what you'd call the subsistence economy into the money economy. And that's why the emphasis is on crops like tea, coffee, fruits that they can be able to sell just beyond the normal food that we usually farm, the maize, beans, and everything.
Which are staples for the most part.
Exactly.
Now, of course, the president, again, in his conclusion, does talk about the fact that we, for the first time in 500 years, are now peaceful. And he sends a veiled message. It's the closest he gets to politicking, really. The usual politics, as we know it, sending jibes at his opponents and all that. And he says, nobody has the capacity to disturb this peace that we're enjoying, however much they try. And he says, therefore, dear Ugandans, the outlook seems to be bright.
Yes.
Is that one way to say perhaps 2017 is going to clamp down on any little machinations that they tend to destabilize the peace as well?
No. I think, I mean, Simon, you appreciate that Uganda is really like one diplomat put it recently. It's an island of peace,
in a sea of
instability, and I mean we live in a region that is. Look at Sudan, look at Congo, look at Burundi, and all these other places. So for the peace that we enjoy in this country, it should not be taken for granted. And obviously there's been a lot of effort put in by the president, the army, the security agencies to ensure that the country is as stable as it is. And let me tell you, you're not going to push any other thing if the country is unstable.
For sure.
There'll be no investment. All these projects we're talking about will not happen if the
Fair enough. So is the president saying that this time around, hakuna mchezo, you bring your manyanga about destabilizing the country, they sort you out? I mean, we have examples talk about, especially as the year ended, the guys in Renzururu will tell you clearly that theirs was not a cup of tea.
And the president did mention that there was issues that were emerging in Kasese, but he says they've been put to rest now. Because obviously there are people who had funny ideas, really, and they thought they could use the cover of a kingdom to cause instability. And the president has been very clear that's not going to happen. Look, if you're involved in a political activity, do it in the lawful manner, in the framework of the constitution. No one's going to disturb you. But if you want to use other methods of passing over your message, of creating instability, destabilizing people, then obviously the state has the duty to ensure that law and order prevails.
Don, I wouldn't have let you go with that statement without giving it the usual stress testing, but certainly time is not on our side. And so I bet we have to put a stop to this in terms of discussing the substance of the president's message. Now let's look at the form of the delivery of the president's State of the Nation address. He does talk seriously about ICT and how it's improving the way government is run. And we're asking ourselves, why doesn't the president's sanctum of delivering this message also get ICT prone? I mean, I would imagine at the end of your message, you look at citizens in the eye like I am doing right now and read the message to them without having to look down and then flip pages and then adjust spectacles. He should sit and have a teleprompter like how other presidents do it. I mean, I love the way Putin does it. So why can't he emulate some of this?
Obviously, you can always copy some good practices everywhere. But the president is very ICT compliant. The president runs a Twitter account. He's on Facebook. You've seen pictures of him, playing with computers and stuff like that.
I've seen him take a phone call, and I'm asking myself, does this phone of his even access WhatsApp?
The security issues that come with these smartphones of yours that you.
What do I know? No, and I am not.
But that said, the president is passionate about ICT, and as you can see, he mentions in the speech, he's hoping that government interventions can ensure that the price of the internet comes down, so that there's more connectivity, and I think that's the right way to go.
Let's go back to the form. Why doesn't he use a teleprompter and read his message in a more savvy way than the old style, the grandfather looking down upon his children, reading to them rhymes?
We shall consider that. Thanks for that idea.
Well, but I also must give you kudos that the fact of, the whole color thing about it, the picture is clear and crisp. It's not the grainy ones that we used to see in the days gone by. So perhaps there's an improvement that we hope could get even better.
Obviously, we must continue making it better. And as we move towards a middle-income country, it must be reflected in all our, activities.
Don't have not had anyone reassure us more than ever that this country will attain middle income status by 2020 as per National Development Plan and the President's continuous assertion. Do you want to assure us this morning, you, Dawn, as the senior presidential press secretary, that this is going to happen?
It is going to happen. It is going to happen, but it's also very much collective effort. It is you and Simon, you and me playing our part. It is about that government bureaucrat, technocrat somewhere who must ensure that if an investor comes here is able to get his trading license in the stipulated 48 hours, don't toss people around, don't ask for bribes. Do your part as a citizen and make sure that we're able to move. You see, the president, the CEO, he has set out what the vision of the company,
the strategic direction.
Exactly. So it's the rest of us to be able to push and work towards this. And I'm sure if we do our part, there's no reason why we shouldn't get there.
Well done. Should I let you off the hook without you making a comment on the fight against corruption? He doesn't seem to mention it anywhere in his end of year message. Yet we know that for all the things that we do for this country, corruption is at the center.
No, if you listen to...
Has it become so normal and mundane that he doesn't need to talk about it?
If you listen to if you watch the video, some of the comments he made were slightly off cuff,
yes.
Off cuff, and the corruption comment he did talk about it, and I think we've already seen some serious effort towards ensuring that corruption is actually punished. I do not want to get in because some of these are subjudice, but you know that for example in the energy sector there were certain suspensions that had to happen because people were not taking decisions and all these claims of this and that.
Yeah, being the spin doctor that you are, you have to bring this down to my doorstep. I must stop you there before you start emotionally blackmailing me.
No.
It's been a pleasure having a conversation with you, Dawn, and
yeah, sure.
I must also congratulate you for making it here on time for the first big story conversation on this incredible program.
I appreciate that's the whole Chisanja Kuna Mchezo concept. Yeah.
Well, we
keep
hope
time
and deliver with the precision of an arrow or a dart.
And the set timelines, yes.
Incredibly. So that is it from Dawn, the senior presidential press secretary, having this conversation with us, breaking down what the president actually does mean and direct us to do in his beginning of year message as he did deliver it on 31st of December 2016. We hope that this sets the pace for government actions in the year going forward, and importantly for us as citizens, not just to play our part in contributing to the realization of what's been set out, but also to hold government to the highest level of accountability so that what they promise, they actually do deliver. Good morning. Stay with us. It's more quality programming here on Morning at NTV. Let's take a breather. When we return, it's Everyday Life.